My name is Amber Sullivan. I was 28 years old, 15 minutes late, and standing 3 steps behind my fiancé when I heard the sentence that ended my engagement. The copper table was loud that Tuesday night, low music, glasses clinking, familiar laughter. The kind of place where people came to celebrate things they could afford or pretend they could. I was late because I had been juggling client calls in the car, one vendor issue, one timeline change, one last-minute request, the kind of things that happen when you actually work for a living. Chris Dalton did not notice me walk in. He was sitting at our usual corner table, relaxed and confident, holding a whiskey I had paid for. Around him were the same friends we always met: Brian, Evan, Lily, Nina, the people who had shared dinners, trips and weekends that I had quietly covered for nearly 2 years. I stopped when I heard my name. I do not want to marry her anymore. She is just too pathetic for me. The word pathetic landed like cold water. I did not move. I did not breathe. I stood there watching my fiancé gesture casually with his glass as if he were discussing the weather. Brian laughed. Lily covered her mouth. No one corrected him. "Come on, man," Brian said. "You have been together 3 years. What changed?" "Nothing changed," Chris said. "I just realized I can do better." He took another sip. "Long term, I need someone with more ambition, someone with real professional success." The irony would have been funny if it had not been crushing. Because the woman they were mocking was the one paying the rent, the car, the credit cards, the dinners, the trips, the image Chris wore so comfortably. Lily finally noticed me, her face drained of color. She said nothing. Chris kept talking, about distance, compatibility, how he was slowly pulling away so I would end it myself. That was when I understood something with perfect clarity. To him, I was not a partner. I was a resource. I stepped forward. Chris turned around. And in that exact moment, when our eyes met, his confidence collapsed. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I reached up, twisted the engagement ring from my finger, and placed it on the table. The sound it made was small. Final. That was the moment everything broke. Before that night, I would have told you Chris Dalton was the safest choice I had ever made. We met in 2021 at a professional networking event downtown. One of those mixers filled with name tags, warm wine, and big conversations about future plans. Chris stood out immediately. He was confident without being loud, well-dressed, charming in an effortless way that made people lean in when he spoke. He told me he worked in consulting, marketing strategy, big picture thinking. He talked about growth, clients, expansion, about launching his own firm soon. He spoke like someone already halfway there. I was impressed, not because of the money but because of the certainty. At the time, I was building my own event planning business from the ground up. Long hours, tight deadlines, real clients with real expectations. I admired ambition because I lived it every day. Chris seemed to admire it too. He asked questions, remembered details, talked about how driven I was, how refreshing it was to be with someone who understood work. In the beginning, everything felt balanced. He planned dates at new restaurants, booked weekend getaways, talked about the life we would build together once his business fully launched. When he mentioned temporary cash flow issues during the transition, it sounded reasonable, strategic even. Everyone needs support sometimes. What I did not know was that his confidence was not built on results, it was built on projection. His success was something he talked about constantly, but never actually demonstrated. It was like someone who always talks about their startup but never shows the product. Only the logo, only the pitch. By the time I noticed that his plans never turned into action, my belief in him had already turned into financial support. And my money had quietly begun carrying his life. It did not happen all at once. That is the part people never understand. No one wakes up one day and decides to financially support another adult completely. It happens slowly, quietly, in small reasonable steps that never feel dangerous in the moment. At first it was dinner. Chris would reach for the check, hesitate, then smile and say he would get the next one when a payment cleared. I believed him. Next came weekend trips. I booked them because I was better at planning. He would pay me back later. Later never came. There was always a reason. A client delayed an invoice, a laptop crashed, his car needed repairs. Always something urgent, always temporary, always just this once. I told myself this was what partners did. They carried each other during transitions. Then the apartment happened. Chris said we needed a downtown place, something impressive, somewhere that reflected where we were going, not where we were. He said appearances mattered in consulting, that clients needed to see success before they felt it. The lease went in my name because my credit was stronger. Then the car payments. His credit was not great yet, but it would improve. Then credit cards, just for expenses related to the business. Then a premium gym membership because that was where networking happened. Every step had logic, every step had a story. What I did not notice was that while my responsibilities increased, his did not. His job applications slowed, then stopped. His workdays became flexible. His meetings became lunches. His networking became golf. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks, managing real clients, delivering real results, growing a business that actually existed. And still, he talked about my career like it was a hobby. Event planning, he would say, you just throw parties. That sentence stayed with me. Because the truth was, my so-called hobby was paying for his entire life. I thought being supportive made me strong. I thought patience was love. I thought if I just carried us a little longer, he would catch up. But if someone keeps falling and you keep catching them, eventually they stop trying to stand. If every month has a new emergency, it is not bad luck. It is a system. And I was the one funding it. Standing behind Chris at that table, every moment of the past 3 years rushed back at once. Brian leaned forward, amused, asking about the wedding like it was a joke. 6 weeks away. Deposits paid. Invitations already sent. So what is the plan? Brian asked. You still going through with it? Chris smiled, relaxed, confident. I am already working on my exit strategy, he said. I have been creating distance, showing we are not compatible. She will probably call it off herself soon enough. They laughed. Lily noticed me then. Her eyes widened. Her smile froze. But she did not warn him. She just watched. Chris kept talking. She thinks paying for everything makes her this amazing girlfriend, he said. It is actually kind of sad. The table erupted again. That was when I stepped forward. The laughter died instantly. Chris turned around, still smiling, until he saw my face. The color drained from him so fast it was almost impressive. Amber, he said, I did not expect you. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had defended to friends, the man I had supported through every excuse and delay, the man I had planned to marry in 6 weeks. Slowly, deliberately, I removed the engagement ring from my finger. I placed it on the table. The sound it made was soft, but everyone heard it. Well, I said calmly, that saves me from wondering whether to return this or sell it to cover the wedding deposits you were never planning to honor. Chris opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Amber, wait, that is not what I meant. You meant every word I said. The only mistake was saying it out loud. Brian tried to jump in. Come on, Amber, it was just guy talk. I smiled, not because it was funny, because it was clear. Brian, how long have you known the lease was in my name? Silence. The car, the credit cards, the bills, all mine. No one met my eyes. Here's the thing, I continued. You all seem to think Chris is this impressive catch. This successful man settling for me. But for 18 months, I have been the only thing standing between him and financial collapse. Chris looked like he might be sick. I stood up straight and picked up my purse. The lease ends next month. The car will be returned. The cards are canceled tomorrow morning. I looked directly at him. Starting now, you get to find out what your lifestyle actually costs. Then I walked out. I did not look back. And the moment I stepped into the night air, I knew there was no version of my life where I went back to that table. I did not go home and cry. I went to my car, closed the door, and sat there for a full minute letting my hands stop shaking. Not from heartbreak, but from adrenaline, from the clarity that comes when denial finally lifts. Then I made the first phone call. My bank answered on the second ring. I gave my name, verified my identity, and said a sentence I should have said months earlier. I need to remove an authorized user from all accounts, effective immediately. There was no drama, no judgment, just quiet efficiency. Yes, they could block Chris's access right away. Yes, they would overnight new cards. Yes, they could place alerts on every account. 15 minutes. That was how long it took to undo 3 years of financial entanglement. Next were the credit card companies. Same process, same calm confirmations. By the time I drove home, Chris's spending privileges were already gone. At the apartment, I found a note on the counter, his handwriting, careful, controlled. We need to talk. This is not how I wanted you to find out. Not I was wrong, not I am sorry. Just regret that his plan had failed. I poured myself a glass of wine, an expensive bottle I had been saving for the wedding that would never happen. It tasted better than I expected. Then I opened my laptop and started canceling vendors. The venue, the photographer, the florist, most deposits were non-refundable. I accepted the losses without flinching. Losing money hurt less than marrying someone who despised me while spending it. I made lists, accounts to close, utilities to transfer, items that belonged to him, boundaries that should have existed all along. My phone buzzed non-stop, missed calls, messages, explanations, accusations, panic disguised as apology. I did not respond. That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply. Not because things were resolved, but because I had finally taken control. The next morning started with pounding. Not a knock, not a polite request, full force fists against my front door. Amber, open up, we need to talk. Chris's voice sounded different. Thinner, stripped of the confidence he wore so easily the night before. I did not answer. I made coffee instead, the good kind, the kind I usually saved for guests. I checked my emails while the pounding continued, growing louder, more frantic. After 20 minutes, my neighbor knocked on my door, Mrs. Parker from across the hall. She looked concerned. Honey, that man has been out here for a while. Do you want me to call the police? Yes, I said calmly, that would be perfect. The pounding stopped when the patrol car arrived. Through the peephole, I watched Chris try to explain. He lived here. I was upset. This was a misunderstanding. The officers asked for proof of residency. He had none. The lease was in my name. They were polite but firm. He was told to leave. Continued disturbance would result in arrest. When the hallway finally went quiet, my phone lit up again. This time it was Nina. She came by later that afternoon. Concerned, gentle, disappointed in me. Chris is a mess, she said. He cannot afford groceries. He is sleeping on friends' couches. You are being a little harsh. I opened the door but did not invite her in. Nina, I asked, when he called me pathetic last night, why did no one say anything? She looked down. Why did everyone laugh? Silence. You all enjoyed the dinners I paid for, the trips I funded, the nights out I covered. Did any of you ever wonder how he afforded it? She shifted uncomfortably. I thought you were just generous. There is a difference, I said, between generosity and being used. She sighed. This just is not like you. She was right. The old version of me would have apologized. This one did not. I closed the door gently. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. When you stop funding someone, you also stop funding the people who benefit from your silence. 2 days later, Chris tried a different approach. My phone buzzed at work. It was building security. Amber, there is a man downstairs asking for you. He says he is your husband and that you are not well. He claims you need to go home with him. My stomach dropped. I took a breath before answering. What did you tell him? I told him he would need identification showing you share a last name and documentation if he is claiming you are not competent. Thank you, I said. Please ask him to leave. If he refuses, call the police. 10 minutes later, Miguel from security confirmed Chris was gone. That was the moment I realized this was no longer just about heartbreak or money. It was about control. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. Andrea Walsh listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The lease, the accounts, the canceled cards, the visits, the lies. When I finished, she spoke calmly. Everything is in your name. You have every legal right to revoke access. Document every interaction. Save messages. If his behavior escalates, we can pursue a restraining order. Hearing it stated so plainly felt grounding. I also told my boss Denise what was happening, not for sympathy, for transparency. She leaned back in her chair after I finished. So for 3 years you were working full-time here and running his entire life on the side. I had never framed it that way, but she was right. Then, here is the good news, she said. You just got a lot of your time and energy back. And I think you are ready for the promotion we talked about. The promotion Chris said I did not need. The one he said would make me too busy. For the first time I saw the pattern clearly. When I stopped carrying him, my life did not fall apart. It expanded. The silence that followed surprised me. No constant calls, no last-minute crises, no managing someone else's schedule on top of my own. At first, it felt strange, almost empty. Then it felt peaceful. I accepted the promotion Denise offered: senior coordinator, better clients, creative control. Travel opportunities I had postponed for years because Chris needed me available. I moved into a downtown apartment I had admired from a distance. Hardwood floors, big windows, a place that felt like mine the moment I walked in. I discovered I actually enjoyed cooking when it was not about pleasing someone else's expensive tastes. Simple meals, quiet evenings, music playing just for me. I slept better, thought more clearly, laughed more easily. I took a trip with a close friend, 2 weeks away, no checking in, no guilt, no pressure to manage someone else's expectations. Freedom did not arrive as fireworks. It arrived as quiet, as the absence of tension, as the relief of not being responsible for another adult's sense of worth. And while I was rebuilding my life piece by piece, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Chris was struggling. But for the first time, his struggles were no longer mine to solve. Peace, I learned, often feels unfamiliar before it feels good. And once you recognize it, you stop confusing chaos with love. The calls started a week later. The first was from Linda Dalton, Chris's mother. Her voice was polite, controlled, carefully concerned. Amber, I hope you do not mind me calling. I am very worried about Chris. He says you have cut him off completely. I took a breath. We are no longer together, Linda. It would not be appropriate for me to support him. But you are engaged, she said. Planning a future. Surely you still care. I care about his well-being the way I would care about any person struggling. That does not make me responsible for his finances. There was a pause. He says you are being punitive. I almost laughed. Linda, I was not required to fund your adult son's lifestyle. I chose to for 3 years. I stopped when he told a room full of people I was too pathetic to marry. The line went quiet. Later that day, his sister Rachel called. She did not bother with politeness. What you are doing is cruel, she snapped. He cannot afford basic necessities. You have money. You could help. I knew to the soul. I have money because I work for it and budget for it. Chris does not, because he avoided responsibility while I carried him. So you are just abandoning him? No, I said calmly. He abandoned our relationship when he humiliated me publicly. I am just refusing to keep paying for it. She hung up. That was when I understood something clearly. When people are used to benefiting from your sacrifice, they call your boundaries cruelty. About 3 weeks later, Chris asked for one last conversation. I was leaving work when I saw him waiting near my car. He looked smaller somehow, thinner. His clothes were clean but cheap. The confidence was gone. Amber, please, he said. Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I stopped. I did not invite him anywhere. I stayed standing, keys in my hand. I wanted to tell you I am getting my life together, he said quickly. I have a job now. I am staying with my parents while I save up. That is good, I said. I am glad you are working. He swallowed. I have been thinking about everything. I know I made mistakes. I want to make it right. How? I want to pay you back. Everything you spent on me. It might take time, but I want to do the right thing. Do you know how much that is? He hesitated. Maybe 10 or 15,000. I looked at him steadily. Chris, it was over $50,000. Rent, car payments, credit cards, travel. About $53,000 in total. The number hit him like a slap. That is not possible, he said quietly. It is very possible. You just never noticed because you never had to carry it. He stood there in silence. I cannot pay that back. I know. That is why this conversation changes nothing. He looked up at me, desperate. So that is it. We just never talk again. Chris, you ended this when you called me pathetic in front of your friends. I just finalized what you started. I opened my car door. I hope you figure your life out, but you will do it without me. And this time I walked away knowing there was nothing left to explain. 2 years passed. I did not hear from Chris directly, but his name still surfaced now and then through mutual acquaintances. Enough time to notice a pattern. Enough distance to see it clearly. Chris got engaged again. Her name was Melissa Grant. According to social media, she was supportive, optimistic, proud of him. The captions talked about new beginnings, real partnership, finally being understood. I felt nothing. A few months later, the engagement ended just as quietly as it had begun. What I learned later was simple, familiar. Chris could not qualify for an apartment. His credit was damaged, his income inconsistent. When Melissa asked questions, he blamed a controlling ex who had ruined his finances out of spite. But Melissa asked better questions. She talked to people, compared stories, looked at timelines, and realized she was funding the same lifestyle I once had. She cut him off. Completely. Not long after that, I received an email from a journalist named David Bennett. He was working on an article about financial manipulation in relationships. How capable, successful people end up carrying partners who contribute nothing but entitlement. Melissa had given him my contact information. She said you handled it with strength and clarity, he wrote. She said your story helped her recognize the pattern and leave. I thought about it for a long time before responding. Then I agreed, on one condition. Do not use real names. This was not about revenge or humiliation, it was about recognition. About helping someone else notice the signs sooner than I did. When the article was published, messages came in from people I had never met, women who saw themselves in my story, who finally had words for what they were experiencing. One message stayed with me. Thank you for telling the truth, it helped me leave. That was when I knew my story had outgrown my past and become something useful. For a long time, I thought what happened at that restaurant was the worst moment of my life. I was wrong. The worst part was not hearing someone I loved call me pathetic. The worst part was how long I had been shrinking myself to keep him comfortable. Here is what I learned, and I hope it stays with you. If someone mocks you while benefiting from your effort, that is not love. If support only flows in one direction, that is not partnership. If your generosity is required to earn basic respect, you are being used. Real love does not need you to go broke to prove your worth. Real partnership does not make you feel small so someone else can feel big. And ambition does not look like excuses dressed up as plans. There is nothing wrong with helping someone you love. There is everything wrong with carrying someone who refuses to carry themselves. The night Chris called me pathetic, he thought he was having a private moment with his friends. He thought he was managing his exit. He thought he was in control. But that sentence ended everything. Not because it hurt me. Because it showed me the truth. He ended the relationship that night. I simply finalized it. If you are listening to this and something feels familiar, pay attention. Discomfort is information. Doubt is not weakness. And walking away is not failure. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop explaining, stop funding, and stop staying. If this story resonated with you, tell me where you are watching from. Share your turning point in the comments. Like and subscribe for more stories about boundaries, self-respect, and quiet revenge that looks like peace. Because the best revenge is not destruction. It is building a life so solid that you never need to look back.